Greetings and salutations, and welcome to the Onyx Tavern. This is your host, the Barkeep, and today I'm bringing you episode 21 of the Tavern, presented by HeroTaku.com. And what I've decided to go ahead and discuss today is I'm going to give you all my thoughts and interpretation on the greatest treasure in the universe from Gokaiger. So this is actually something that I've had on my mind for a long time that I wanted to go ahead and discuss. I watched all of Gokaiger. I ended that last year, and I've let it kind of set on me a little bit, and I think it's now time that I want to go ahead and discuss the aspect of the greatest treasure in the universe, and kind of tell you guys what I feel are major problems with it, and how it relates to the series. Now, just before I get into that, I will say that I did like Gokaiger. I thought it was a good series. I thought it had a lot of interesting elements to it. But overall, it was good. I'm not going to say it's the best. I'm not going to say it's the worst. I'm just going to go ahead and say it's good. But of course, keep in mind, I've only seen 5 full Sentais in their entirety. That being said, however, the biggest issue that I had with Gokaiger was basically there was no explanation for just about anything. Everything is in the series. We accept it, and any questions that we have are quickly brushed aside to get to the next Gokai change, basically. Which, for the most part, it wasn't that bad. But, the greatest treasure in the universe, I think, is the biggest problem with the series. And it's because, really, that's the MacGuffin that everybody's trying to get a hold of in the series. Well, at least the Rangers are, and then Bosco's trying to get a hold of, too. But we really don't get an understanding of what it is, where it came from, and just, again, how it kind of works. So let me kind of explain where I'm coming from here. For those of you who have not seen the series, first of all, I suggest you go ahead and do that before listening to this podcast. But in episode 49, the Gokaiger finally attained all the keys, they obtained all the greater powers, and they learn how to obtain the greatest treasure in the universe. This is obtained by, 1, turning Navi into a giant door, which has 34 locks, which conveniently the 34 Red Ranger keys will open. They travel through the door to the center of the Earth, where they find this pyramid device that is the greatest treasure in the universe. Now, through it, the spirit of the Earth talks to the Rangers and says, you can use this to do anything you want. Basically, what it's saying is that it's a god device, or the time matrix, as you will, from the Animorphs series. It can change reality as we know it to make it anything that you want. And the Rangers, ask, can we bring back our dead relatives and loved ones? Can we bring our planets back and all that? And then the guy and the spirit of the Earth's like, sure, why not? And then he says to the Rangers that you need to use all the Ranger keys to activate it. But Don makes the point, well, if we use it, what happens to the powers? And the Spirit of the Earth says that they will be erased from existence as if the 34 Sentai do not exist. And then that leads us into, the moral choice of what to go ahead and do with the powers. Do you get rid of the Zanyak? And I hope I pronounce that right. I never get it right. Do you get rid of the Zanyak by sacrificing the 34 Sentai? And then, is it more morally right to do that, basically? And that's kind of the bare bones of what it is. Now, ultimately, the Rangers decide not to go ahead and do this, that they don't want to go ahead and sacrifice the powers. The Silver Ranger, he destroys the pyramid so it can never be used by anyone ever again, and the Rangers defeat the Zanyak by themselves. So, basically, the entire series is building up to this one device, this great treasure that Bosco and the Rangers are trying to look for. And there are a number of things that I don't understand. I mean, first of all, let's talk about the origin of this device, or lack thereof, basically. What we know from the series as a whole is that After the Legendary War, all the Rangers, all the 34 previous Sentai, lost their powers, and their powers manifested into keys, which were collected by the Red Pirate Gang, Aka Red, Bosco, and Captain Marvelous. Now, Aka Red had stated to Bosco and Captain Marvelous that we have to collect all these keys and gain the powers to find the greatest treasure of the universe. Now, Aka Red's whole point in this was that he was going to return the powers to the original Sentai so they can continue the fight. That was his mission. But he lied to Bosco and he lied to Marvelous because he wanted them to come along, and if he said, hey, we're going to use this to return the powers of these warriors from a distant planet, they wouldn't go along with it. But he's using the legend of the greatest treasure in the universe to basically con them into doing this. And the thing is, the greatest treasure in the universe does exist, and it happens to be on Earth and connected to these powers. So what I'm trying to go ahead and figure out from this is, so we have this great power that can be unlocked by the Sentai powers, but how long has the greatest treasure in the universe been there exactly? I mean, if we're going by the fact that it exists with the Sentai powers, then has it existed since the late 70s? Or if you want to look deeper into the continuity with Shinkanger and all the previous Sentais, has it existed on Earth for forever, basically? And why the 34 powers? Okay, let me get back on track right here, because I have a lot of questions about this that I just don't seem to understand, and I can't find any answers for. So we have a power that is powered by the 34 Sentai. Again, where did this greatest treasure in the universe come into play? And again, if it's the greatest treasure in the universe, then how do other planets know about it? Because it seems to me that the way that space is portrayed in Gokaiger, and I don't know how it's portrayed in the other Sentais, specifically the ones where they go into space, but space seems to be a place that's non-inhabited by humans, or specifically humans from Earth. That there is this great community, this space community, where Earth is not a major player, or they're not even known. And I think it's been mentioned a couple of times that Marvelous and the others did not know that there was an Earth until Aka Red told them, or the Zanyak went there to go ahead and conquer it. And even the way that it's portrayed by the Zanyak is like, it's a backwaters planet, we can get it in a week, it's not going to go ahead and be a big deal, basically. So for the greatest treasure in the universe to be on this planet that nobody knows of is also curious to me, because it does not seem that anybody from Earth has left to tell anybody about this. Because I would find it odd that aliens from the other side of the galaxy know about something on Earth that nobody on Earth seems to know about. Because not once because everybody's like, we want the greatest treasure in the universe, and they're like, what the heck is that? I've never heard of it. I've lived here my entire life, and I've never heard of the greatest treasure in the universe. So it's a very curious origin as far as, how everybody found out about it. I mean, Aka Red, I can understand, maybe found out about it, but that's another question altogether about Aka Red. We still don't know anything about him. And I thought this series was going to tell us about Aka Red, that we were going to learn his origin and his story. We didn't learn any of that. I mean, we understand what he did after the 30th anniversary, but we don't know anything beyond that. And that's kind of a major issue in my mind, that you have this character that you don't do anything with, that is essentially he's not the crux of the series, but he's the one who got the plot going, only for him to die or disappear or something. Again, I'm not quite sure exactly what happened to him. And then we need to go ahead and bring up the fact of the Gokai powers in Na'vi. Because what it said, the Spirit of the Earth says it's the 34 Sentai powers, not the Gokai powers. And again, we have no idea of their origin, where they came from, what they do, or anything like that. And then we have Na'vi, who is the door, but is made from space, probably, or made by Aka Red. We don't know. We don't get an explanation for that. The point I'm getting to at this time is that We don't know anything about the greatest treasure universe. It has no rhyme or reason. It truly is a MacGuffin. It is something that they want, they can't get a hold of, and it's mysterious, I'll grant you that, but there's a difference between being mysterious and just not explaining anything. So I don't understand the greatest treasure universe, how it's tied to the Sentai powers and so forth, especially if one existed far longer before the other. Now, the next issue is like, okay, so Navi becomes the door and leads them to the center of the Earth. Okay, did you really need the door? Did you really need the Sentai powers to get there? We know that the Sentai powers are necessary to activate it, but it seems getting it doesn't seem to be that difficult. I mean, granted, humans would not be able to get to the center of the Earth, but with Sentai powers and all the special abilities that they have, somebody could have gone to the Earth a lot easier and then get the keys later. Which brings up another question: what if somebody did go there? If before the Legendary War, somebody went down there, got the greatest treasure in the universe, and then tried to activate it? Well, you don't have the keys. Does that mean you have to have all 199 Sentai within the same room together to activate it? Again, that doesn't make any sense. It's basically saying it has to be in the key form because it unlocks the door. But again, I think you can get into the center of the Earth without having to use the Navi's door. So yeah, that's very confusing. And then retroactively, think about this also for a second. It's the 34 Sentai. Now, the thing is that when Gokaiger came out, obviously Go Buster, Kyoryuger were either in development or not even a thought, respectively, and they weren't going to go ahead and factor in. But the fact is, they knew they were going to make, a 36, 37, 38, and so forth Sentai. This was not going to be the very last season. I've never read any information to say this was going to be the very last Sentai. That being said, they kind of wrote themselves into a corner saying the 34 Sentai. Well, keep in mind here that at the exact same time that the Gokaiger were operating, because of the movie, we know the Go Busters were already commissioned. They were doing stuff. And we know the Kyoryugers had been around for at least 1,500 years because of Ramirez, that he's been in the past. So that begs the question, is it just 34 specific Sentai, or can it be any 34 Sentai? Because I find it hard to believe that the powers of Kyu Cyan, which have existed for, again, 1,500 years, or Kyu Gold, could be around, but not necessary to go ahead and activate these powers. Now, again, I'm talking about series that happened after Gokaiger, but they should have known that they were going to make another one, that the powers might be in the past. The only way you can write yourself out of that is to make every Sentai afterwards powers post-Gokaiger, meaning that they would have never been ancient Rangers or Rangers from the past. And again, they did the crossover with the Go Buster during one of the movies, and they're Sentai, aren't they? Or do you have to achieve maximum level of Sentai or something? I don't get that. So that's an issue that I have right there, is that it has to be 34 Sentai, and when at the Gokaiger, why can't you use the Gokaiger powers? Does that count because they're not from Earth? Well, there are a lot of powers that are not from Earth. The Flashman powers are not from Earth, and yet they can be utilized. I don't get that. Now, here's my biggest complaint about it, because besides the things like the spirit of the earth, or that it could be destroyed by the greatest treasure could be destroyed by a simple laser weapon from one of our rangers, all of which is ludicrous and all that, I'm still kind of confused on exactly what it does. Now, again, it's a god machine. It's a time matrix of sorts. They want to go ahead and use it to erase the Zaniac from history. And they believe by doing this will go ahead and make their planets free, bring everybody back alive and stuff like that. So there are two ways of looking at doing this. There is the God machine, where it basically says, God says, Deus Ex Machina, and then suddenly they're all gone, and history is changed for it. Now, if that is the case, then what's going to happen to the people who were part of the empire? Because that's something that people need to go ahead and understand. This is not a soulless, mindless empire. This is not the Dominion from Deep Space Nine of genetically engineered and cloned aliens with a center figurehead or in the founders, basically. This is an empire that is made up of soldiers and civilians in there. You have planets that were conquered, planets that may have formed this empire. Because I'm willing to believe that the Zaniac are not just all costume monsters. That there are humans. That there are actually people in there. That there are innocent civilians. Because even look at the Empire from Star Trek. Yeah, I mean, it was the Republic before, but it was more than just stormtroopers. It was people on, Naboo and Coruscant. I mean, if you had Luke Skywalker erase the Empire from history, then technically you're erasing a lot of innocent people. So they're talking about erasing the entire Empire, and then everything would be hunky-dory. But what happens to the Rangers and their memories? I mean, are they still the Gokaiger? Do they still have the Gokaigalian? Did the legendary war even happen? Because then we have a paradox at that point. Because if you erase the Sentai from history, and I'll get into more of that in just a second, then they would have never fought the Zaniac, they would have never formed the keys, and thus the keys would have never been made to get to the greatest treasure. See, you see where I'm going with this? It's a time paradox that one cannot happen. Now, if it's a God device, then yeah, I can go ahead and believe that, God or whatever could come in and erase those things and reshape the universe that way. But let's also look at it as a device in which to change history and time. Because it could be that they go back and, if you want to stop the United States from forming, you go back and kill George Washington when he's crossing the Delaware. Another reference to Animorphs here. If that's the case, and you erase the emperor or whoever founded the empire and all that, then what happens to everything else? Because once again, we're in a time paradox here. I mean, there are two ways of thinking about it, but when you run into the same problem is that it cannot be done because the events that you erase or alter will affect whether you could do it or not. It's sort of like, I remember watching the Twilight Zone when they did new episodes of Forrest Whitaker on UPN, and there was an episode where a woman went back in time to when Hitler was born to try and kill him as a baby, and she died with the Hitler baby. But it turns out the nanny took a baby off the street and said, this is actually your baby, and that was the baby that became Hitler. It's the idea that the past cannot be changed, that your actions, no matter what you do, will ultimately lead to the same conclusion, basically. That if you go back to kill Hitler, there's only going to be something or someone else that takes his place. And that's the problem that I see with erasing the Zaniac, is that it's not going to go ahead and happen because you're going to have the same result almost. Because again, you can't erase them because it would never get you to use the device in the first place. So again, it's a mixed message right here. I'm not understanding exactly what's supposed to be going on right here. I know I'm rambling about it, but it just tells you how confused I am about this point. That it can alter things. But your means of doing that would also cease to exist. So it doesn't make a lot of sense there. Now, the biggest issue I really have about this is in regards to erasing the Sentai powers. The Spirit of the Earth says, in so many words, their powers and their existence itself will be erased. So here's the thing about that. It's implied through the dialogue that the powers themselves would go ahead and be erased, that they would never exist. So basically that means that no Zoo Ranger, no Jetman, no Go Ranger, none of those would have ever happened. That when the universe is remade, that they will never existed within history. That's kind of the perception that it gives. So what they're concerned about in the episode is if we erase them, we will not have these powers anymore, and the Sentai will have never existed on Earth. Now, what's also implied later on is that the Rangers themselves, the people who obtain the powers, would never exist. And that's where it's losing me here. Because basically what it's saying is that we will erase the Sentai from history, but it sounds like the people would be erased too. And I don't get that. Somebody would need to go ahead and explain this to me, because it seems like they're saying, okay, if we do this, then Jan from Geki Ranger will have never been born, is kind of what it sounds like, that he would be erased from history. What it originally says that he would never become Geki Red, but that's not. Again, it's confusing. I'm confused on this point. Is his powers going to be erased, or is he going to be erased? Because when Guy ends up meeting Mammoth Ranger, I think it's in the next episode, it's like, we're willing to sacrifice ourselves for the universe to be safe. That definitely seems like he's saying, I will no longer exist, and the universe will go ahead and be safe, is what he's saying, is that I am willing to die and never exist in history. I don't get that point, and that's for a number of reasons. Two major reasons actually come up from here. Is, okay, one, so they never existed. So if the Zoo Rangers never existed, as Mammoth Ranger is stating here, then are you saying that Rita's counterpart, I think Bandora, would have took over the Earth 65 million years ago? Because think about that for a second here. Mammoth Ranger and all the other Zoo Rangers are 65 million years old. They lived within the time of dinosaurs when they went extinct. So that basically means that history from 65 million years ago up to now, or then, would be radically changed, meaning that Rita's counterpart would have taken over the Earth 65 million years ago, killed dinosaurs, killed all life, possibly killing all humans at that point. So by erasing them from history, you've already let one evil take over the world before the Zanyak would even exist. It's like, okay, so Zanyak don't even exist, but you have all these other villains from Die Ranger, Kaku Ranger, O Ranger, Go Ranger, Jacka. All those villains still exist. And if there's nobody in their way for opposition, then they would have taken over the world anyway. So what's the point of erasing the Zanyak if you're going to erase all the Sentai teams and their powers, and there's nobody to defend Earth? Now, this could lead to a paradox that other Sentai teams would be formed, but then again, you're back where you started, is that you got teams of heroes that will battle somebody, and, whether it's the Zanyak or something, somebody's going to eventually learn about the treasure in another form. So it's circular, is what it is that if the Greatest Treasure in the Universe works the way the series says it is, you cannot achieve a conclusion. You cannot achieve peace in the galaxy by just erasing the Zanyak. And that kind of leads me to the Rangers themselves, and the problem I have with their thinking is, like, for as much as they think about others, they think about their planet, they think about their sister and their friend and all that stuff, they have a very narrow focus on what to do. Because, all right, let's say for the sake of argument, I had the greatest treasure in the universe, and there's no plot hole to using it. I'm not going to say I would, wish the Hitler never existed. No, you want to say that there has never been any evil in the world. You want to kind of cover your basis. It's kind of like, okay, if you get a genie and you have 3 wishes, your first wish should be, I wish for unlimited control of space, matter, and time. That way, you really don't need the genie. You've covered all your bases. You have to think wide. And for these Rangers, they're not thinking wide, because if they get rid of the Empire, yes, their worlds are going to be safe, but Earth is going to be in total chaos from whatever ancient evil is going to take over the Earth, whether from Gokaiger, Gokaiger, or whatever, and all that. Because there is no Sentai standing in their way, or if there is, they would go ahead and arise. And who knows, you could be causing a greater problem because say if Long, who's a god, remember, is able to take over Earth, how do you know he's not going to come out through the universe and destroy other people? There's no safeguard for protecting against evil on Earth, basically. So, again, it's causing all these problems, all these issues here. And then the second issue I said that I had is, like, why not do the obvious? If it is truly a god machine to where you can recreate and reshape any way you want, why can't you make a universe where the Sentai exist and the Zaniac don't? Why can't it be that way? Well, why can't you do that? That's never discussed by either the Earth Spirit or the Rangers or anybody. Nobody says, well, can't we just remake the Earth with them? I mean, if they're reading their minds and granting their desires, I'm sure Guy, because remember, Guy doesn't really have any wish. He just like being part of the team and being the Rangers. I mean, if Don's going to ask for his planet back and Luca's going to ask for her sister back, then why isn't Guy going to say, I wish that the Sentai still existed? Can't you do that? Or is it like the genie where you can't wish for a million wishes? That's never explained, because that would be the easiest way out. Because it's basically saying that you can do anything you want except this one thing. That's like the only rule. And I don't get that. It doesn't make a lot of sense there to me. So, I mean, for the thing they've been chasing the entire series, it is the most amazing thing, and I would say it is the greatest treasure in the universe. My goodness, why isn't we only have 6 pirates there looking for this thing? Why isn't nobody else looking? Again, if it's existed for as long as it have, how come nobody else has been looking for it from the past Sentai or even the future Sentai? Future Sentai villains, they don't know about it. Aliens from the other side of the galaxy, they know about it. But villains that originate from Earth, they don't have a clue. I mean, I'm sure Messiah would love to get his hands on something like that, don't you think? Again, it is the greatest treasure, but it just seems so ill-conceived. Because, again, we don't know what it is the entire series. I'm not even sure if the writers knew what it was when they first came up with the series or started writing episodes. Again, we don't see it until the 49th episode, so it could be 48 episodes they were struggling to figure out what the heck it was. And then they came up with this. Now, is it lazy? Not really, but it is definitely half-assed, to where they didn't come up with, again, an adequate explanation for everything. Because the thing with a television series is that you can be left with certain questions. And same is true for movies. You can be left with certain questions like, what did Marcellus have in the briefcase and all that kind of stuff. Those are good questions to go ahead and have, which the writer-director will put in there to get the audience thinking. But when you end your series kind of like, what did she see behind the door and all that? Why are they smiling? Why did Daisy come back with a flamethrower to Mario's apartment? That's just that's just lazy. You're leaving them on a cliffhanger, but with no intention of explaining them. And in Gokaiger, there is sort of a cliffhanger, like there will be future adventures with these guys, as evident with the crossover movie. But everything that they've been through, you still have questions. Nothing is wrapped up nicely. Yes, all the previous Rangers have their powers. Yes, everybody has like a new mission that they want to do. But let's be honest, the series started with them coming to Earth to find the greatest treasure and use it to their advantage. They did not accomplish the latter half of that. So, the ending really kind of leaves a bad taste in my mouth. And what I think is that most people are willing to forgive these plot holes because of the characters, because of the Gokai changes and the past, and all the nostalgia that this particular season brings in. But as somebody who, again, has only watched a few Sentai shows and is not really as into it as Power Rangers, basically, I just find it very concerning that there is no explanation on this. I mean, because let's say, for the sake of argument, that Power Rangers will have a greatest treasure in the universe equivalent, a god machine. Now, based on the information present, I don't think that's going to be the case for Super Mega Force, but let's just hypothetically say here. Power Rangers has been known not to explain things out of laziness or sheer incompetence by the writers. But that would be something that American audiences would definitely want to go ahead and see. I'm not saying Japanese audiences don't want an explanation, but you have to explain this somehow for somebody. Somebody's going to be out there. I don't get that. It's never been explained. And here's the funny thing. I have never read on any of the Gokaiger forums or Ranger Board or anybody disappointed with the greatest treasure. Nobody has brought up this question. And when I was watching the show with my wife, she didn't even bring up this question. I was like, honey, don't you get it? She goes, no, I don't get it. And I explained all that I talked to you guys about, and she goes, so? So maybe I'm overthinking it, but I don't think I am. I really believe that this is a issue with the series as a whole. It's a letdown of a conclusion when you find out what they choose to do, which is not use it, fight their own way out, which is great because it's basically saying don't take the easy way. But the easy way in this is not even explained appropriately for us to see if it was an easy way. And once again, it's easily fixed by just saying, hey, let's have the Sentai exist. So, yeah, those are my overall thoughts here. I may be leaving a couple of things out, a couple of details in there. But that's the major thing is I'm really concerned about the origin. I don't understand why the Ranger keys, the Ranger powers are important. Will the powers or the Rangers themselves, the people themselves, be erased from history? And why don't they go ahead and just make a universe where Sentai exists and Zaniac don't? So, again, those are my major issues right here. What I would ask all my fans out there to do is, like, if you have an idea or have a thought about, anything on this, please leave in the comments below. Is there an explanation I'm missing from some extended universe material that was only printed in Japanese? How do you guys feel about it? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad? Are you okay with it? Or didn't I even cross your mind? So, again, just kind of let me know what you guys think about this. Is it a big of issue for me? Because, again, it doesn't ruin the series, but it just leaves a bad taste in my mouth when I think about the overall story, basically. Let me go ahead and end with that. But I want to thank you guys for listening to my thoughts here today. You guys enjoy the rest of your day, and we will see you next time. The tavern is now closed.